to another episode of Somewhere Out There. Joe Hero here, and Chapter 3 of Intruders, entitled Kathy in New York, began with Bud describing the scope of Kathy Davis's investigation, a bizarre tale involving over 20 people. Bud prepared extensively for Kathy's first visit to New York, setting up hypnotic sessions and meetings with other UFO investigators. Kathy had a history of acute anxiety, and to help ease the tension, he placed her in contact with a buddy named Sue, a woman who had also began exploration of her own alien experiences. Both Bud and Sue reassured Kathy that once she commenced the exploration of her UFO-related incidents, she would be left alone by the aliens. It turned out that they were very wrong. Kathy made arrangements to leave for New York from Indianapolis on October 13th. However, in the early morning of October 3rd, Kathy heard her voice called telepathically. A paralyzing fear gripped her, and she called Sue for reassurance. She then woke her mother, who told her to go back to bed. A small ball of light whizzed down the hall next to Kathy, making her even more frightened. Kathy retrieved her 3-year-old son Tommy for psychological support and went back to bed with him. Sometime later that night, Mary came into Kathy's room asking why she had called her. They both heard a humming sound coming from outside, and although both women were too scared to go outside to investigate, they awoke the next morning with identical symptoms of extreme stiffness in their necks, arms, and shoulders, feeling exhausted or dull with pain. Kathy called Bud in the morning to tell him about the incident, and upon questioning her, they discovered blood drops on her bedclothes where her neck would have been. Bud met Kathy at the bus terminal and discussed her medical history on their first afternoon, which revealed a troubled and problematic medical past. One potentially significant detail related to her alien abduction experiences was a subcutaneous cyst that was removed on her shin, which could be moved around but produced only mild discomfort. It was surgically removed during her gallbladder removal surgery. It shot out of the incision, hitting the light reflector above the surgeon, and proved to be an impenetrable small calcified object which had even broken a needle off. Kathy also had become pregnant from her husband-to-be early in 1978, as verified by blood and urine tests. She was developing normally until she awoke in what seemed to be a normal menstrual flow. Subsequent pregnancy testing proved she was no longer pregnant. During her hypnotic session, Kathy complained that her throat felt odd, causing her to swallow and clear her throat repeatedly. Her second session yielded a broader knowledge of her 1978 experience with the 2 figures in her room. She remembered getting up, leaving her sleeping husband to stand by the kitchen sink, whereupon she floated with her eyes closed. She remembered being examined and probes shoved up her nostrils, hurting as they broke through her sinuses and caused blood to run down the back of her nose into her throat. She also recalled pressure in her abdomen and neck. She then remembered the small gray-skinned figures standing next to her on the examination table on which she lay, speaking to her telepathically and handing her the shimmering box and then taking it back with the instructions that when she saw it again, she would know what to do with it. Bud then gave several other examples of other cases where nasal implants had been involved. Curiously, no X-rays or CAT scans had been provided evidence to support actual implants at the time of the writing of Intruders. This has since changed. The next item Bud addressed with Kathy was the October 3rd 2 a.m. event where he learned she had made a trip to an all-night diner to get food, realized she forgot a drink, went back, and then saw a brightly lit object in the sky, which she assumed to be a blimp. She proceeded home, where she heard the voices in unison telepathically calling her name, her mother and her hearing the humming, etc. Bud included a transcription of the hypnotic session, which he performed, in which Kathy described the aerial maneuvers of the craft which she saw on her second trip to the food store. It appeared to Bud that at the center of Kathy's story lies the strong implication that her behaviors were being externally controlled. She said how she had made it to the 7-Eleven, but it really wasn't that place. There were many windows through which she saw lights, and then a guy who was not the clerk appeared behind her, causing her shocked fright. She felt very cold. Bud pointed out some typical abduction scenario details which occur in many cases. Kathy finished by saying she went home, still having no drink. A less than 10-minute trip to 7-Eleven had taken 55 minutes, during which time her father had gone to bed. She felt creepy, and the evening proceeded as she told Bud earlier, with the strange happenings to her, her phone call to Sue, and the happenings between her and her mother. Another detail emerged, which was that she ended up outside after her abduction, which involved a lot of touching and poking, including a collar-like device put on her, which later produced the blood spots on her bedclothes. Bud still had no clue that the evenings of the October 3rd night were to be so important. A spontaneously remembered detail in the investigation of Kathy's experiences was to lead to perhaps some of the most critical information in UFO research. Joe Hero here. Until next time, be safe.